but then we always had nothing night. And that's where I got the most resistance from the kids, because they didn't want to think about nothing. They didn't want to stop and think about God, or what do I do? I'm going to get bored. How do I go to sleep then? But it was intentional on our part to give them a chance to think about God and to tell them so. Hey, here's what you can do on nothing night, to teach them how to relax and exhale. Welcome to the show called Let's Talk Homeschool, brought to you by Apologia Educational Ministries. This is the show where we talk about everything homeschooling, the who, what, when, where, why, and how. We want to affirm and encourage you in the decision to homeschool, challenge and inspire you to take it to new heights, and celebrate everything you get to experience along the way in this adventure of a lifetime. We're your hosts, Davis and Rachael Carman, and today's show is titled Doing Family,
Yay!
Bedtime Routines.
Oh, man.
Okay, Rachael, let's talk homeschool.
Let's talk homeschool.
So we are winding down this series entitled Doing Family. We started it a year ago, roughly. We do one roughly once a month. And after this, we have our conclusion. So we had 10 major topics in the middle, an introduction at the beginning. This is the last of the 10.
Yep.
Bedtime routine. So there was a mild Deuteronomy 6 theme where 4 of the episodes, this being one of those 4, was related to Deuteronomy 6. Teaching your kids to love God when you rise up, when you lie down, when you sit, and when you walk along the way. And so this one is covering the lie down portion of Deuteronomy 6, obviously. Bedtime routines, evening routines. So let's start with you and this really, really young ones, the infants and the toddlers that are so precious.
Oh, man, you're killing me.
You had some, you were very good at creating a schedule that really helped in the development of our kids and the culture of our family.
Well, yeah, and I learned from other people who went before me, but, when they're just so little, and I know that there's probably some moms listening out there, there's nothing you wouldn't give for just 3 straight hours of sleep. I totally get that. But I don't think you can start this doing family bedtime thing too early. And even when they were teeny tiny, when we first brought them home, just starting to develop that wind down the day at the end of the day. So we would characteristically, we live in the South, and so there was always bath time, and we loved bath time. And then there was, the singing during the bath time. And I just want to say, one of the things that I learned really early on as a mom was slow down. Don't rush. Take your time. I think sometimes as moms, we can be so anxious to get to the next thing that it's our own fault that we have excess time, right? I mean, if we just slow down and just enjoy every step of the way. And I didn't get that with my first few kids. So true confession. I think maybe it was a number 4 or number 5. I was finally like, you know what? I should breathe more often. And so especially at the nighttime routine, as the parent, you're really setting the tone for that. And so we would just really slow down and enjoy bath time and playing with the toys and watching the water drain out of the tub and drying them off and putting lotion on. So Johnson & Johnson's baby lotion, even today, if I smell another child that has that on, I'm just like, oh, all of my little people. So we would do that. We would just really wind it down and really slow down. Obviously, there was no television, no screen on at this time, not even music at this time. We would sing to them. And there was the Donut Man, if anybody remembers the Donut Man.
That's a blast from the past.
That's a throwback. So I don't know that this is going to, He had a song, My Body is a Temple of the Holy Spirit. And we sang that song like every time the kids took a bath. And it talks about your body being a temple of the Holy Spirit. And so we would sing that song, and then we would put on their jammies, and then we would go in and we would read a book. And even when they were little, we would do this. And I think we have a daughter-in-law who's doing it even better than us. So one of our daughter-in-laws now is actually, they've taught them the Lord's Prayer and the doxology. They sing it every night. And we've gotten video of our grandson singing the doxology as he goes to bed. But that is a routine they do every night. So he's kind of cued and he's ready and he's prepared, and his little sister, and this is the rhythm of the night. We talk about rhythm all the time here, and I think it applies certainly to how you wind down the day.
Well, when you think of infants and really young ones, like we're talking about at this moment, I even think about our 6-month grandchild and how important it is for him to be on a schedule and to know that when his mom takes him to his crib and turns on the music for the mobile, that's his cue, even as a 6-month-old, that, I need to just give up and go to sleep.
That's right. This is it.
So she's putting him to bed while he's awake now, because he's learning the routine, and that creates a security, a peace, and a calmness for everybody. The 2 words you mentioned, because I don't want people to miss the second word.
Okay.
You said slow down.
Right.
And I think people heard that loud and clear, but I want to make sure they also hear the word enjoy.
Yeah.
You said slow down and enjoy it, because as we've all heard, it goes by fast. It really does.
It really does.
And so you want to be in the moment, in the present, and just enjoy the bath with your infant, the bath with your 1-year-old, the bath with your 2-year-old, the bath with your 3-year-old as they age, and you go through your routines. Slow down, just be in the moment, and enjoy every moment, because it goes by so fast. One of the things I tell my kids with their own is the first 2 years, it's amazing the growth and the development that happens with a child, ranging from just the simple rolling over to sitting up, and then suddenly they're walking, then they're talking, then they're running, and then riding a bike. It just goes by so fast. And if you're rushing, and if you're frustrated with the work that is required, because it's 24/7, 365 for sure, don't let that get in the way of slowing down and enjoying. So.
And just breathe them in. So this is tough because we just had everybody here for the holidays. And so the last ones have gone home. The house is super quiet. And I'm sitting here recording this, thinking back to all of those nighttime routines we did all those years ago. And, now they're in dorm rooms and apartments and their own homes, and they have that firm foundation. So they can still go back to that, and it is a source of security. And then it's also something that they get to pay it forward to our grandkids, to their children. Right. And that's what we're getting to see now. The other thing that I will say that's really valuable about a nighttime routine, like a lot of the things we've spoken about, is it is a show you can take on the road. So when you travel, when you go to grandma's house, when you go on vacation, what you do is you just pick up that nighttime routine and you take it with you. And in a strange place, under strange circumstances, your kids can still have the security of, oh, right, this is how we go to bed. This is what this looks like. Right. And so, again, we're always talking about how do you give your kids security? How do you give them self-confidence? It's this way. This is how you do that. And you do it by having these rhythms and these routines that cultivate that confidence that they know what's happening next. And everything's good. Mom and dad are there. So it's invaluable.
Right. So one of the things now, as your kids get older,
right,
then it can be a little bit harder for bedtime because they're a little bit more self-sufficient. Mm-hmm. They can dress themselves, maybe brush their teeth themselves, go to the bathroom themselves, even get in bed themselves. And so it could be very tempting to say, oh, my 5 through 12-year-olds are fine. Just do it on your own because I'm exhausted. But once again, don't miss this opportunity. This is your chance to do family, to take the institution that God has given us and do something intentional and great with it for the very short time that God is granting these kids into your home. Yeah. I heard a stat recently, and it's true. It's not arbitrary. You will spend 95% of the time with your kids by the time they're 18.
Right.
So once they're 18, you have already spent 95% of the time you're going to spend with your kids because they're going to move out, move on, start their own families. Yeah. So it's not like you have a second chance or an opportunity to catch up later.
Right.
It's now. While you're in the trenches, make the most of it. So for those elementary age kids,
oh man,
this was one of my favorite times. I loved going up there and brushing their teeth and making sure they actually did it and did it well.
Right.
Going to the bathroom,
Right.
maybe getting a drink.
Yeah.
But then once you tuck them in,
Yeah.
spending time in their bedroom with them. I like to say it this way. Half of Deuteronomy 6 happens in the bedroom. When you
Wow.
rise up and when you lie down.
That's true.
So don't miss the opportunity just that your time as a parent with your kids in the bedroom in the morning and now in the evening to teach them to love God.
Yeah.
And so we would read to the kids. There were times when we would do family worship in the evening. There were other times when our schedule was more conducive to doing family worship in the morning. But when we did it in the evening, then that was the time that we were setting the bedtime tone by reading the Bible, singing some songs, getting on our knees and praying, and then we're now walking into the bedrooms, laying down, and it's not a rush at that point. It's still a slow down moment.
Right. Exactly.
To maybe read some other books to them. My girls loved it when I would tell them stories.
It's so true.
And I would make up stories and say them creatively and turn the lights on and off to flash lightning and things like that. So that was always fun, just being creative with storytelling and book reading and read alouds. There were plenty of times when we just gathered the kids together and read to all of them before we dispersed into the bedrooms. But don't miss the kisses and hugs.
Yeah.
Just make sure that they know you love them. Smile, tell them you love them, tell them you're proud of them. All that genuine love that a parent can give to a kid at bedtime. The last two things I'll say were interesting in our own family. So audiobooks were a thing and are a thing. Kids, at some point you got to leave the bedroom. And so it's time to start getting to sleep. And so our kids would listen to audiobooks. And Adventures in Odyssey was a big one. I'll let you talk about that.
Okay.
But this was the key. As much as we allowed our kids to listen to audiobooks, and the audio player would typically have an automatic shut off after an hour or something like that, we also had one night a week that was nothing night.
Right. Well, they couldn't listen to audiobooks every night even then. So, I mean, it wasn't like they automatically went to bed and turned something on. They had, I don't know if it was 3 or 4 nights a week, they could read books, and then the other nights a week, they could listen to something.
Right.
But then, like you said, there was always a nothing night.
Right. Yeah. It typically was 3 nights a week you could read your own book on your own. 3 nights a week you could listen to an audiobook. But then we always had nothing night. And that's where I got the most resistance from the kids, because they didn't want to think about nothing. They didn't want to stop and think about God, or what do I do? I'm going to get bored. How do I go to sleep then? But it was intentional on our part to give them a chance to think about God and to tell them so. Hey, here's what you can do on nothing night, to teach them how to relax and exhale and consider and ponder creation or the week or their day.
Right.
So I believe that was a good habit that we had into the routine, even though it was the one that we got the most resistance on.
Yeah. And, we know now what we didn't know then, and that is our 2 oldest. Our oldest would actually tell stories to his younger brother. That was what they did on nothing night. So they made it work, even though there was a lot of pushback. So I want to just say a couple of pointers on all of these things so far. I think you have another stage to talk about, but I want to talk about a couple of pointers while we're here, and that is, do this smart. Be proactive. Do everything that needs to be done before your kids get in bed with them, right? So make sure they go to the bathroom. Make sure they brush their teeth. Try to stop every excuse that they could have for getting up and out of bed. That's what I'm trying to say. Now, we had a policy, I think we've talked about it here before, about going to the bathroom when I asked them to go in the bathroom, whether we were on a long road trip and we stopped to go to the restroom. Our policy was everybody gets out and everybody goes. And it was inevitably somebody said, but I don't have to go. And I would always say, I didn't ask. And the whole thing was, we're stopped, so everybody's going to go. And we did that when we would go to the grocery store, because I didn't want to have to go to the grocery store bathroom every 15 minutes. So we went twice, when we came in the door and halfway through. And so when it comes time to bedtime, everybody goes to the bathroom. It's not, I don't have to go. It's time to go because we're going to go lay down. And so there's still a process of training between I need a drink, I need to go to the bathroom again, whatever your kids' excuses are for getting out of bed. But do your best to cut those things off at the pass. Secondly, I think it's worth mentioning, when our kids took naps and when it was time for bed, no screens, no snacks. That's not what this is. Even though there were audiobooks, I'm going to advocate strongly and encourage you, no screens at bedtime and no snacks. They don't need to have a water bottle in bed with them. They don't need to have cookies and crackers in bed with them. And they don't need to have an iPhone or a screen or an iPad to watch while they go to sleep. That is not good for their neurological function. It is not good for them to wind down. It's just not a good long term. I mean, we're going to wind down, let's wind down. And that is best accomplished by reading a book or just thinking about life or listening to an audiobook story. I do want to mention also, even when they could listen to something, it was on a time frame.
Right.
So they couldn't just stay up and listen till midnight, right? They could listen to like 1 30-minute something, and that's all it was. I just want to encourage you. I think right now we've sort of entered into this period of time where parents aren't being parents. I just want to encourage you to be the parent. This is how we're going to do it here. And you can have confidence that it is the best thing for your kids.
Well, and literally think about the fact that you are developing and training your kids.
Yeah.
So, for example, on the no screen policy when you go to bed, absolutely agree with that.
Right.
Because that's even a good policy for you as adults.
Right.
No one needs to go to bed with the last thing they're doing is being on their phone. You need to put it away.
Right.
And wind down, whether you just read a book, have a conversation with your spouse,
Right.
say some good prayers,
Right.
go to sleep.
Right.
We all know that. The question is, what are we doing?
Yeah.
One other specific thing I'll add for any age of your kids, and again, this is where you're creating a family culture and a way of doing life and training, and that is on Saturday night, you're preparing to go to church on Sunday morning. Mm-hmm. And it's so hard to get a small family or a large family all packed up in a car and a van with breakfast and fed to get to church. Mm-hmm. So to avoid the Sunday rush, we had Saturday night, you lay everything out. Yeah. And I have to admit, this is where it's hard to be the full-fledged parent, because even as many times as Rachel and I learned, okay, I want to see your socks and underwear laid out. I want to see the pants that you've picked out, the shirt, or that we've picked out, because inevitably, if we assume, well, we can find underwear in the morning, we can't. No. And so the trick was to make sure every last piece of clothing was laid out in the bedroom where you could physically see it. It's right there. I've seen the shoes. They have shoes for tomorrow. Then Sunday is so much more relaxing and enjoyable.
It should be. It's the Lord's Day. And so, and with that, and this is maybe even a whole other conversation, we're showing them that you actually prepare for Sabbath. You actually give a little forethought to celebrating the Lord's Day. And so we would lay everything out and it would all be prepared. Now, that does not mean, let me be very clear, that does not mean that every Sunday morning we ever had was just, perfect.
Oh, no, we had to learn the hard way many times.
We did, but we planned ahead, and the kids helped plan ahead so that it could be a peaceful morning, not a where are your socks, where are your shoes, yelling at each other, and late. Of all the things that I think that we can help our kids be on time for, it's the celebration service that we go to on Sunday morning. It's remarkable to me how we don't prioritize being on time for that, and we have an opportunity with our children to do that as a family, make that a priority. So, push back the schedule as far as you have to, but really endeavor to prioritize being there, prepared, peaceful, and punctual. That's what I think would be really great.
Right. So we're going to take a quick break, and then we will return to this conversation. So thank you for listening to this podcast. It's called Let's Talk Homeschool. It's brought to you by Apologia Educational Ministries. And Apologia's mission is to help homeschooling families learn, live, and defend the Christian faith. Apologia is the #1 publisher of creation-based science, math, and Bible curriculum for homeschooling families, with hundreds of #1 awards for over 2 decades. Creation-based and award-winning. Now that's impressive, but more importantly, Apologia is trusted by homeschooling families all across the USA and the world. Go to apologia.com, a great place to explore creation. Okay, Rachel, we've been talking about doing family.
Yep.
Bedtime routines, evening routines. We've talked about infants and the toddlers. We've talked about the elementary age years. And now we're going to transition for the last piece here to talk about the teen years.
Right.
What do bedtime and evening routines look like with teenagers?
Very different.
Very, very different. That is the
Very,
truth.
very different, because their need for sleep is substantially increased. I remember Deb Bell saying one time that she was trying to encourage mothers who had teenagers and assure them that the extra sleep that they needed, that they were craving, that they were insisting on, was actually a need. It wasn't just a laziness, but that all of those neurons are starting to connect. All of these things you're trying to teach them. If you can think about when they're sleeping, they're filing all that information, they're assimilating all that information. And I don't know about you, but as a mom, I'm like, yeah, they need their sleep. The problem comes is that their sleep cycle shifts. So we are by nature, you and I, early birds. I don't think there's a teenager on the planet that's by nature an early bird, but they are characteristically night owls. You and I were still getting up super early. The kids were sleeping because they needed extra rest, but they were staying up late. And we would be with them all day long, having, was reading aloud to them. You were helping with math. We were doing science experiments. We were having a grand time, eating 3 meals together, all of that. But they didn't want to engage until like 10 or 11 p.m.
When we're exhausted.
I mean, my goodness, I can remember they would come in and ask these remarkable questions of life, of God, of relationships at 10:30. And I was like, I hope you brought toothpicks with you because I need to prop my eyelids open.
Well, and it usually started with a knock on the door.
Right.
We're horizontal, laying down, reading a book, maybe talking, and they say, can I ask you a quick question?
Yeah, it was never a
And
quick
we
question.
know, okay, I got to change mindset here.
I
This is
know.
going to be an hour plus,
Yeah.
depending on who it was. And
Right.
usually each kid kind of brought their own personality. Some, it might be a relatively quick question. Some, it might be a question where you needed to start pulling out the real issue. And others, just hang on, you're going to be there for an hour and a half or two and a half.
Yeah, I
Because
know.
they just couldn't. And you'd have to say, look, I think we've talked this to death.
Right.
It's time to go to bed and process what we've talked about.
But you and I would
Tomorrow's
have to-
still available.
Yeah, you and I would have to sit up and pinch my cheeks and get something to drink and turn on a light or 2 or 3 because, like you said, we're going to be here for a while. But here's the deal. Those questions disappeared if I didn't take them then.
Right.
It was of utmost importance that I responded when they had the question, not when it was convenient for me.
Right.
And that was hard. That was really hard. I say that it was hard, and it was hard. But I had some really fond memories. I mean, we cannot dare share some of the questions that came into us at 10:30 or 11 p.m. But they were great conversations
They
that were
were.
coming out. A lot of them were relational in subject, and we laughed, and sometimes we cried. But those were really meaningful and important conversations.
They were important because they built into the relationship we were having with our teenage kids that has continued into their adult years.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point.
Where they still occasionally will come to us. The point is that we created an atmosphere where conversation was welcome.
Right.
Questions were allowed.
Right.
You could have the conversation more than once if needed.
Right.
Because they had never really thought through some of these things.
Right.
We had advice and counsel that we could offer. And for goodness sake, if your kid is coming to you,
Right.
don't miss the opportunity.
Well, and I was going to say it didn't stop when they graduated. So, we've got people launched now, and I've still gotten a phone call from a college campus, or I just dropped off my date, or I'm headed home after I'm in bed. I mean, my kids know these things about me, and yet what they know more about me, they know that I'm an early bird, they know that I'm early to bed. But what they know more than that is that I will take their phone call.
That's right.
And I think that that is so valuable for the relationship, that they know that you're here, that I'm here, that if the phone rings, and sometimes they'll try to call you and you miss it and I pick up and vice versa. And it's just a blessing, because we all need to know that there's somebody who's going to pick up the phone and talk to us.
Right. Well, and wouldn't you rather your kids come to you for advice and counsel than to the world? And the world has a lot of convenient ways for them to go to. They can go to Google.
Right.
Do you really want them going there first?
No.
Especially for life questions.
Right. Yeah, for any kind of a question. Yeah. So, and again, we talk all the time, and our culture talks a lot. I hear a lot of standing in line in different situations, or maybe even at church. I hear people saying, yeah, I haven't heard from my son, or I haven't heard from my daughter. They get older. And I just want to say, I'm not saying that those times won't happen to us, but I think one way that we can be proactive to having a longer, more satisfying conversation with our adult children is by daring to actually lean in and listen to them when they're young. Because when we do that, when we talk about things that maybe we're not as interested in, maybe it's Legos, or maybe it's a Rubik's Cube. Who knew how many conversations we'd have about Rubik's Cube? Or when we have those conversations and we listen to them and we engage with them, and we don't just shove them off or push them off or tell them it's too late or just not now, guess what? I think they talk to us more here. And that's what we've seen.
Right.
And that's what we all want. And so I think that's why this is so valuable. If you've not read the book, I'll Love You Forever, that book relates to what we've talked about today. It talks about how this mother lovingly at bedtime put her son to bed all these years. But there came a day when she was old and she needed to be put to bed. And who did it? Her son did.
Yeah, it's a beautiful story.
You don't get that if she didn't do it on the front end. Right. So, and I just want to say too, no matter where you are, it's never too late to start these things. It's never too late to come in and say, you know what? We haven't done this in the past. We really want to add this because we think it's valuable. So if you're out there and you're like, man, this sounds great, but my kids are already 10 and 11 and 12, where do I start? You start where you are, and you just start exactly where you are, and God fills in all those gaps. But do lean in and enjoy bedtime.
No, so true. Well, as always, it's hard to bring these conversations to an end, but it's that time. So thank you for listening to Let's Talk Homeschool. This is brought to you by Apologia Educational Ministries, and we are your hosts, Davis and Rachael Carman. As always, we're walking by faith and enjoying the homeschooling adventure of a lifetime. Have a great day.